Right, hello everybody, and welcome to this, which is the meeting of the RSS Professional Statisticians Forum on improving the accessibility of official statistics. We have three speakers this afternoon. The background to this is that there's been a lot of encouragement from the National Statistician and the UK Statistics Authority to improve the accessibility of statistics to the public and to increase, therefore, their impact. And what we're going to do in this meeting is that you may remember that there were some official statistics awards last year. There will be some this year as well. We're going to have presentations this afternoon from the winner and runners-up from those awards to describe the work around accessibility leading to the awards and how it was supported and how it's been taken forward and what others might learn from it. We've got three speakers who I'll introduce separately. We've got Richard Batterham from HMRC, Andy Milne and Bill Oates from the Welsh Government, and Rob Fry from the ONS. That's three talks. There will be an opportunity, we'll run through the talks consecutively, and there will be an opportunity at the end for people to ask questions. And if you do think of a question you'd like to ask, then please, you should see a Q&A box at the top of your screen, and if you type it in there, then we'll know you want to ask a question, and if possible, we'll get it asked at the end of the three presentations. What I want to do now then is to start with the first presentation, and I want to introduce that from Richard Batterham, who's, as I say, from HMRC, and he's a non-statistician business manager in HMRC's Trade Statistics Unit. His principal responsibilities are the publication, delivery and dissemination of UK statistics on trade in goods, and this is done via a variety of channels, including the uktradeinfo.com website, and he also manages data user relationships. And when he's not doing that, he takes his life into his hands and goes out in Southend to support Colchester United, which he tells me is a dangerous activity. So, without further ado, if I could introduce Richard and invite him to give his presentation, which should start with the slide that you'll have on your screen at the moment. Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thank you, Andy. As Andy suggests, I'm going to talk to you about HMRC's dedicated trade statistics website, uktradeinfo.com. We were very pleased that the website won the Excellence in Official Statistics Award 2013, particularly considering the strength of the competition, which will be demonstrated by the other two presentations that you'll see and hear today. Moving on to slide 2. Just a little bit of background. HMRC publishes a broad range of national statistics, from tax receipts through to child trust funds. This is a reflection of the size of our organisation and the broad range of responsibilities. If you want to know more about HMRC's portfolio of national statistics, you'll see that there's an embedded link in the slide. Please click on it and you will be taken to gov.uk to find out a little bit more. I come from the Trade Statistics Unit, which is a small team based in Southend, as Andy mentioned, just over 100 of us in total, mainly focused on the collection of data. We collect and publish UK import and export trading goods data, published as the Overseas Trade Statistics, or OTS, and the Regional Trade Statistics, RTS. These two national statistics publications are derived from data that's collected from UK customs declarations for UK trade with countries outside of the EU, and the Intrastat survey of businesses relating to business trade with countries with other member states. The OTS and RTS aggregate releases and the detailed underlying trade data is all published via our dedicated website, uktradeinfo.com, and the aggregate releases are also dual published on gov.uk. Before moving on, I'll just briefly explain what I mean when I mention detailed trade data, because this is actually quite key to why we publish with a dedicated website, and actually what the award was all about, really. When we talk about detailed trade data, we release data at an aggregate level on a monthly basis, but the underlying data gives access to import and export information for 9,000 plus commodities, down to combined nomenclature 8-digit level, for over 200 partner countries, detailing value, weight, and other units, for example, pairs if it's shoes and things like that. So it's quite a rich source of information that sits behind the aggregate import and export figures. Okay, if we move on to slide 3, a little bit of background about UK Trade Info itself. The site was first launched in the year 2000. It was actually a paid-for subscription service for a fairly small number of niche users. And just to give a little bit of background, at this time, Customs and Excise, as was selling trade data to what were known as data retailers, so to businesses that would take the data and provide value-added services to their range of customers. Customs and Excise developed a partnership with one of the data retailers, a company known as Forbes, and introduced this website, which was pretty new and different at the time. It offered very high-level information free of charge, but then the detailed data that I mentioned just now available on a subscription. Bearing in mind this is a time when the main platform for delivery of trade data were the printed OTS books, as we called them, which were monthly, quarterly and annual sort of telephone directory size books of numbers. This was quite a modern concept. In 2006, we moved to a position where the website and all of the data within it, the detailed data, was made available to any user free of charge. This is reflecting the sort of the broader move across the world, really, but particularly Eurostat moving to a non-chargeable regime, the ONS doing the same, and other government departments here in the UK. At that same point in time, we also moved to supplying that detailed data to data retailers free of charge. One thing that's significant was that at that time, because of the existing web model, access to the detailed data, although it became free of charge, it was still via subscription. You still had to register in order to be able to access the information. In 2011, we went through a broad program of customer engagement in order to update our understanding of our user base, how they used our data, and what their requirements were for the future. And as a result of that, in 2012, we relaunched UK Trade Info with open access to all, and we're receiving between 25,000 and 30,000 unique monthly visitors every month. Okay, we'll move on to slide 4. A little bit of background to the drivers for change in 2011. One of them was that the contract with our service provider at the time was coming to a close, and we were in the position, because of EU procurement rules, that we couldn't simply renew the existing contract, but we had to put it out to tender, which gave us an opportunity to then consider what it was that we really needed to do to upgrade and update our offering to our users. Another driver was the Code of Practice for Official Statistics, which naturally was challenging all providers of data, publishers of data, challenging us in terms of data dissemination and presentation standards. Our user base increasingly was demanding more of us, both in terms of what technology could offer around access to data, flexibility in the use of data, export, reuse, and also the timing of the availability of the detailed data that's the core to the site. And lastly, of course, is the pressure on budgets. the need to deliver more for less. We move on to slide 5. So in 2011, we embarked upon a fairly large user engagement program. We have a very wide range of users of trading goods data, not just via the web, but our users are across government, commercial, academic, financial, press and public sectors. We tend to use a process of customer segmentation, whereby, based upon their data usage, size and influence, that will determine how we choose to engage with them. We have a fairly sort of mature structure in terms of the channels that we use for user engagement. The graphic on this slide gives a little indication of that, if you can see it. Basically, that's around fairly a sort of one-to-one engagement with some of the bigger players, and that might be about face-to-face meetings, periodic sort of review, through to e-based engagement with web users and inquirers, those that our customer service sort of team support. We used an online survey of our data users, and we use different methods to actually push those users to the survey to give us their views about the site and access to our data. One of the techniques that we used was that because in order to access the detailed data, because it had to be registered with the site, that gave us a rich source of contact information, and we could use the email addresses that were captured as part of that in order to be able to contact some of these users and say, please give us your views, tell us what you think, tell us what you do use, what you don't use, why not, etc., etc. We promoted the survey via news items published on this UK Trade Info site and also the wider HMRC website at the time. And we used our email alert service. This is a function or a service that exists currently and in the previous iterations of the site, where any user can register an interest in a particular subject and receive related content directly in their inbox. We also used our customer service team. They would be picking up customer inquiries, feedback, complaint information, and so we were harvesting that information to tell us what was good, bad and different about the site as we knew it. And any email responses that were sent out by the customer service team or any wider TradeStats unit personnel would contain promotion signatures pushing users to the survey to try and sort of gain as much information from them as we possibly could. We'll move to slide 6. As I mentioned, some of the larger players, we had one-to-one engagement with them. We have a client management set up whereby some of our personnel within the unit will have a one-to-one responsibility for a key client and ensure that they maintain those relationships. We've sought opinion from our international business statistics user group, and we also used other vehicles that existed. There's a former Intrastat triennial review survey as an example. We inserted a few what we thought were killer questions into the survey in order to sort of try and get a broader picture from a wide range of users as to what they really thought. We also approached some of our customers who don't use the web. So we have a number of customers who have non-web outputs from us, and we have an annual survey where we ask them about their satisfaction with the data, its delivery and aspects of our service. So some of this was also to push them and say, well, why don't you use the website? What would make you embrace web technology? And finally, at the time that this was ongoing and the tendering had started, we also had our code of practice assessment, and we had some interesting sort of feedback during that process, particularly around this sort of whole registration requirement, which became a barrier to casual users being able to access the detailed data. We move on to slide 7. These are the outcomes of that engagement. Our users told us that they wanted quicker access to detailed data. The 3-click test. If you're anywhere within the site, can you get to the detailed data within 3 clicks? The registration requirement was challenged, as I just said. It was very useful to to us because it gave us contact information, it gave us a source of information about those users, but it was a barrier to casual users. People would be put off sort of coming, looking, exploring. But then the frequent users of interactive data tables wanted to retain the ability to save tables that they built in that area, because to go back time and again and to rebuild would just be an overhead that they didn't want. Our users wanted us to present EU and non-EU data together in the same table. Previously, they'd been separate data sets, which meant a lot of fiddling about if you actually wanted a global view. They wanted more data, different data fields. We had port or place of clearance. They wanted this to be added, as we frequently got requests for this data, which was publishable but not previously published. They wanted the ability to build time series. Again, in previous iterations of the site, different years were presented as separate tables. You couldn't actually get a view across the piece. Finally, there were requests for reuse options, so the ability to download and reuse the data as much as possible. We move on to slide 8. What did we deliver? Well, March 2012, the site was relaunched, and we did so at a 20% cost reduction, which was a big plus, as you can imagine, certainly in times of austerity. The requirement to register to access the detailed data was removed. You can now get to the detailed data very quickly. You can do so from the home page, and there's an example here there's a bar chart which is showing you the latest month's import and export figures in total. That's dynamically updated. You'll see it on the right-hand side. Dynamically updated every time the interactive data tables are added to a monthly update. That will change. But one of the key things is you click on that chart and it takes you directly to the build your own table area. There are social media sharing links. There's a release dashboard that quickly gives you access to the latest releases that have been published on UK Trade Info. A dedicated consultation area so that we can maintain that level of engagement with our users, and feedback links in relation to the site on every single page. We move to slide 9. If you look at the actual release areas themselves, they have a dedicated release area for our aggregated data, where you can easily access summary level information, commentary, there's headlines, there's metadata content is presented alongside the data itself. There are pre-prepared cuts of the data from frequently requested information, where rather than having to go and find it yourself or build it yourself, it's already there and available for you. Top 20 countries, top 20 commodities, that kind of thing. It's quick line graph visualization of the latest monthly data, and simplified downloadable commentary and graphics. There's also quick links from this aggregate release to the detailed data sets where you can go and actually build the data to your heart's content, and an easy archive for past releases. Move to slide 10. The interactive data tables are SQL based. The database presents EU and non-EU data in the same table. There's data available from 1996 to the current year, and it's updated monthly. This detailed data, the underlying data, is released simultaneously with the actual national statistics aggregate release. So immediately that those aggregate tables and commentaries are published, you can go into the build your own table area and plunge into the detail. There's improved disclosure control, meaning more data can be legitimately published. Our previous site tended to over-suppress due to some of the constraints that we had. And there are additional data fields. UK port has been added for the non-EU trade. Moving on to slide 11. They are easy to access metadata via the tabs, simple build your own table charts, and trade maps. We solved this challenge over not having to register but being able to save tables by having a quick save table view. Users can build a table, click on the save table view link. It produces a URL that can be copied, pasted, shared via social media, email, whatever. They don't have to register to do that. But there's also a long-term table storage facility which users can register. It'll be there ad infinitum, but that's been combined with the alert service registration to reduce the burden, and it's voluntary. Drag and drop data field manipulation and export facilities are there as well. Move to slide 12. One of the latest things that we did last year is that we added a downloadable version of all the complete monthly data set in open data, machine readable format. There's an archive there, and there's 7 years worth of data that you can actually trawl through and download if that's what you wish to do. This has helped to sort of reduce the amount of inquiries that we handle within the customer service area, and it's also meant that our users can self-serve, and that more people than those that were known to us who requested these data sets can actually share and use the data. If we move to slide 13, you can see that we're still asking the question, what do our users think about the site? What would they like to see changed? This is a little snapshot just of the level of satisfaction, and there's some good story in there, certainly from the point of view that there's only 5% that are dissatisfied, but there's still a lot that we can pick up on to help improve the site in future. Now I'll move to slide 14. So what next? Developments that are now underway. We're working toward the simultaneous release of the non-EU and EU data, because currently they are a week apart. We're collaborating with BIS and with the Oates Data Viz Centre to try and develop pre-prepared media-friendly trade maps. We've just published this week some interactive table-building tutorials on YouTube to make it easier for our users to understand how to use interactive tables. And we've got some software upgrades that are happening, and we want to build the community in terms of our engagement with our users via Stats Usernet. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Richard, for that one. As I said, if people want to ask questions, you can type a question in the Q&A box, which will be at the top of your screen. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to work through each of the three presentations in turn, and then we'll take the questions at the end. Just while the RSS team here is loading up the next presentation for us, I'll introduce the presenters, who are Andy Milne and Bill Oates from the Department for Education and Knowledge and Analytical Services of the Welsh Government. Andy tells me that he's ex-ONS, which he thinks increases his credibility, and Bill points out that he's also, as well as working for the Welsh Government, he's doing 2 days a week in the National Statisticians office, working on data strategy and data scientists and things like that. So if I can just hand over now to Andy and Bill to do their presentation, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Andy Milne, and Bill, I don't know if he's going to chip in perhaps at the end or as we're going through.
I'll take over at that point, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. So I'm head of school improvement and school information at the Welsh Government, and Bill acts in full capacity in central services where he does charting and graphing, just as a brief background. So what is My Local School? It's a fully bilingual portal containing information on all maintained schools in Wales. Sorry, are you having trouble with loading? It's working. Okay. Right. It's designed to open up access to school data for parents and others with an interest in their local school. And it contains lots of performance information, plus there's lots of contextual information about characteristics of pupils at schools. We launched it last February, and the structure is that it's updated at various points in the year. There are about 5 major sources of information, and plus, of course, at exam times, things come through the education annual cycle at different points, and so that's when we update the site. The background of the site is that there are always many reviews in government, and one of them was the Viv Thomas review of the structure of education services in Wales, which had many, many recommendations, and I think senior managers thought, oh well, in the fullness of time we will do this, but one of them kept going back to haunt us, and that was a single national IT platform available for all, but particularly focused on parents. There's a sea change from the policy angle that Wales scrapped league tables. It wasn't felt it was a consensus approach, but 14 years, and maybe 11 years after devolution, it was considered that maybe they missed a trick, and there was an element of accountability that had been lost. So that's the background for it. I was involved because the head of the education department called me in and said, what's happening about this portal? I said I didn't think it was my responsibility, and then the minister called me in and said, I want something developed by September, and so it was regarded as a very high priority. I think the Welsh Government was under pressure from the Cabinet Office about transparency agendas, and so it fitted neatly into opening information up to the wider public. And there's been a lot of criticism. I'm from a policy area, and I was dealing with an increasingly large amount of complaints from the press, governors, organisations saying, look, we want access to the data, we want to find out about our education of our kids. We had got already established an all-Wales core data set, and that's a large amount of information, mainly in tabular format, about all aspects of performance at a school level. The issue with that is, of course, it's confidential in many cases, because as soon as you fall, we regard below 5 in a class size, and Wales has constructed many small primary schools in rural areas. A lot of the information wasn't suitable for sharing this information. But that was a good starting point, because we had a handle about what information we thought was interesting and useful. After the initial scoping exercise, basic roundtable, all interested parties were very inclusive, there's a few brain dumps. We decided that an online portal and that was structured at an individual school level, and that you could drill down, was the approach we wanted to take. The initial version of the site was developed. We started off with a very simplistic thing. How it was developed was we simply had bits of paper and thought we wanted to look like this. And Alan, my colleague who works in Bill's team, quickly did a draft, and we just built it up iteratively from that stage onwards. And what was good is the minister liked it immediately. And once I had Leighton Andrews, the education minister in Wales, a very strong, forceful character, and we were able to kind of force through things by saying the minister likes it, and that's quite important when you're sort of challenging resistance in an organisation to develop things. The Director of Education in each of the 22 local authorities in Wales we engaged with. You've got Ofsted in England, but we've got Estin, the school inspectors. They could see the value in this, and so long as it was consistent with what they focused on in their school inspections, they were happy with that, and they were quite supportive. Governors really liked it, and interestingly, the unions because some of the reasons why league tables were scrapped was to probably kowtow to the unions to a certain extent a number of years ago. I thought that, right, this is going to be a difficult one, but the unions actually liked it because we've got other elements of measuring performance of schools. And what's strong about my local schools, it's not so much judgmental, it's very comprehensive in all aspects of the school performance. And they liked the fact that we weren't, say, relying on raw scores for exam results. Since it was designed for parents, we spent some time with focus groups for parents, and it's designed in quite a simplistic way, so you don't have to be ultra comfortable with data. You can just look at charts and maps, and so it's designed in this way, but you can drill down for people who want more and more information about certain characteristics of schools. Now, the way we launched it was quite important. Because it was a bit of a journey for some of our users, I didn't want to isolate or draw in wrath from schools, because it's the first time much of the information was available publicly about schools. So we launched it in a step-by-step approach. In the first instance, we had about 8 users, but some in local authorities, some in schools, who I thought were could provide good feedback. And also it was technically trying out the challenge to see if it worked with web browsers, etc. I think the major issue we found was the browser compatibility, chart load issues, and so we had to redesign bits of the site because of that. And also we took on a number of bits of feedback about what people thought we should be focusing on and moving towards the more distant aspects of the site. So the further restricted beta launches came online as new data became available. As we populated the site more and more, we fixed bugs as we were going along. What's quite interesting is some of the data sets, such as financial data, had never had so many people looking at that. And so in the data sets that have been published in different sources, all of a sudden the data quality of the whole data sets became improved as people spotted, not mistakes from our end, but mistakes that people who would send the data to us in the first place had included. So it's had quite an interesting element of improving the quality of the data. And also by doing it iteratively, it was really useful to let stakeholders familiarise with the sites, because there are about 1,500 schools in Wales, and I was concerned that it might have been a shock to the school system if parents were banging on the doors complaining about what about the performance of school, and so schools themselves could have their own stories ready to explain genuinely explain things about the figures. Advertising, we didn't do a massive advertising campaign. We've got an online magazine that goes to schools called the DISC newsletter, which is Welsh for Learning, and that goes to about 2,400 users, and that tends to be cascaded out there. So that was the main vehicle on the website and Twitter. On launch day itself, what was good, because all this negative criticism we received for the previous 14 years about lack of access data seemed to be completely changed overnight, and literally from a ground zero position where access to information in Wales was regarded as not difficult, not customer friendly. We got things like the Times Educational Supplement, the BBC, HTG, all praising this new initiative. I mean, I could possibly pass over to how we develop the site now to Bill, if you want.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
At the bottom.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think I'm going to need someone to click through the slides. I'm very happy to do a build on the site to bring all the bullets up. I think so my team in Welsh Government is responsible for the overall dissemination of statistics. We have two main sort of channel strategies. We've got our Stats Wales product, which in fact looks very similar. It's based on very sort of similar cube building type approaches as the UK sort of trade statistics site. But we recognise that solution appeals more to a kind of wholesale type audience. So the My Local School principle there, we sort of went back to ground zero and said, right, okay, we're building, the point here is dissemination of statistics to a particular audience. It's to parents. And so we want to work with parents, with governors, with people people involved in the education system to build something that they understand that uses the statistics that we already publish, but are maybe perhaps locked away inside a kind of professional focus system into something which has a more user-friendly front end. So in fact, we've built a second architecture parallel to our primary statistical systems, particularly to deliver this. And in fact, it's become it's becoming a franchise model, because the health statistics people now want a My Local Health, or now have a My Local Health service. Social scientists are now looking at My Local Social Service. So that was an absolute key point in terms of getting the site developed. We're very accustomed to approaching the data from a statistical perspective. Lots of the error checking, all the standard releases associated with statistical control, particularly on the disclosure control. They were all applied to the data, but all wrapped up inside this user-friendly presentation. So I think we were particularly, although the data on there is national, they are national statistics, and they are found in terms of our bulletins. I think for us it's a new departure in terms of the presentation of statistics because of this focus on the usability of it. So we were very pleased to be recognised in the official statistics in the Government Statistics Awards. So, right. So this is where we go into the site itself. So I would encourage everyone on the line, if you're able to, we've got a few screenshots on here, we can't look at the site dynamically. So I'll just talk through what we're seeing on the screen here, but the easiest way to get a handle on what's there is to go and have a look at it. So go into the site, and we're now looking at selecting secondary schools, zooming into a Cardiff area. So you immediately get an overview of all the schools in the area, alphabetical list, and you can click on the schools. So when you do that, one of the key usability things here are the 9 boxes you can see on the screen in front of you, which is what we think are the sort of most important information, the sort of take-home points for that school in big, size 24, 30-point text. You can't miss it. So that's the most important takeaway points for that school, and it's there right in front of you. So underneath that is the full data, if you want, to go into that. So looking here at, we make full range of use of a range of different visualization types, bar charts, got the line charts. What this highlights is looking back we've got retrospective here as well, time series, and the data are all organised using sort of navigation techniques that are really sort of familiar. We tested the different approaches to working your way through the site with the audiences. So this is also important is presenting the data in context. So you can see here the performance of the actual school. In the black line is presented in context with schools of a similar type, but so where it sits. So presenting it in general terms without going into specific comparisons between schools, you can still get a concept about the relative performance. So again, this is going back to the usability side of things. Parents and other people interested in school are obviously interested in that comparison between schools, and we see this number for a school, but is that a good number or a bad number? But in Welsh, in Welsh politics, the political sort of doctrine and understanding is that choice is not a driver in terms of the education system. So this is not about pitting one school against another. But it's it's finding that middle ground between presenting, giving them the raw information and giving it some context. This slide here is looking at how we continue to provide that picture to parents with the idea that schools are placed into performance bands, which, again, rather than ranking them in league tables, it's grouping them and giving parents an idea. So we had to develop some innovative presentation techniques in terms of the banding. And here we've got some more examples of the types of data. I'm hoping that some of the charts, we might actually illustrate the fact that there's data underneath. Not on the slides, but if any one of those graphs, you're one click away from the underlying data sources to actually look at the underlying data. So in terms of the usage and uptake of the sites, we're very pleased with how successful it's been. Because we were concerned about the ability of the site to be able to stand up to the attention that it would receive in the first day, we were very careful to architect it such that there are no moving parts in the site, that it's all driven, there's no server underpinning it, there's no database underpinning it. It's all prefigured as simple text files. We're using a JavaScript format called JSON as our data repository, so it means that it can be stored in a very web-friendly way, making extensive use of pushing to allow the site to operate and stand up to huge amounts of user load. So I'm pleased to say the site has never gone down, 100% uptime, and our hosting contract I think is somewhere less than £1,000 a year for the hosting. It's really inconsequential. Very popular. We see lots of use being made of it. We get good feedback from users. We see it being used. We hear stories from teachers who are actually using it in the classroom, and school governors in particular have given some very positive feedback and have written in to say how good it is. We are looking at some changes to it this year. I think we'll be looking at some user surveys, but we're very pleased with the way the site has gone in the first year. So I think that's the end of the slides there. Got one more to go. So a few developments in the pipeline, as I've mentioned. Looking at the sort of open data agenda, we have had requests that people would like to, that JSON data is all very good. People don't know what JSON data is, but please can we have it in Excel? So, okay, right, we'll do that. There's been a big effort to look at school sports in Wales. There's some very interesting results coming out from that about the uptake of sports, so that's one area of new data that's going in. And feeding across the information, as I say, this kind of franchise model for how the site and the data underpinning can feed into all sorts of other areas. I think that is the last slide. Got that right? And yes, and look forward to questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks Andy and Bill. So that was our second talk, which is from the Welsh Government on My Local School. We're now going to move on to the third talk, and as I mentioned again previously, if you have questions you can type them in the Q&A box which is at the top of the screen. The third talk that we have this afternoon is from Rob Fry, who's at the ONS Data Visualization Centre and who's been there for around 2 years. He's got a strong background in various parts of ONS, particularly census and population estimates, and has been there for around 10 years. And Rob is going to explain just a little of what the Data Visualization Centre at ONS does. I think we're just trying to get the slides up. It's
on my screen, I can see them. Just that one.
Okay, so do we think that the audience can see them? Yes. Okay, well we'll carry on anyway and we'll hope that you'll join. You can't quite see them. Here we are. We're live. So without any further ado, I shall pass over to Rob.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to start on slide 2 actually, rather than slide 1, with a picture of Andrew Dilnot and a statement that he made at his appointment hearing. I think it's back in 2011, 2012, not quite sure when it was. But he says here, it gives us a bit of background as to the work we do, but the people I care about even more than official users are the citizen users. At the moment, the citizen user is essentially held away from all this data by difficulty of access. So one of the things that I will argue for very strongly is new prioritisation for all forms of communication. So in our team, in ONS and the Data Visualization Centre, we kind of read this as, one, the ONS website is pretty horrible, pretty terrible to navigate and find exactly what you want. I don't know about you on the line there, but my first port of call is usually Google. But I think the second point is that perhaps the content on that site isn't best optimised for the web, and perhaps the way that people business areas in ONS were presenting their data is in a very old-fashioned way. Kind of they literally move from what they used to produce in print and just lump that on a website and let people deal with it. But that wasn't really taking advantage of web technology, the different ways that allows you to present your data. So that's where our team fits in. The team's been going for around 5-6 years now, and statements like this and kind of the follow-up support around things like the GSS presentation and dissemination strategy, the UTSA monitoring assessment teams, they've all given us a great mandate for the work that we do, and that's essentially to produce rich, engaging, easy-to-use interfaces that brings ONS data to life. And yeah, this presentation is really about what we won. Well, I say won. That's the wrong term, because we were runner-up in the Official Statistics Award for some census visualizations that we put out in 2012, 2013. So move on to slide 3, which gives you some details here around the census releases. So the first release of census data was looking at the household and population estimates. At the national level, we had individual age sex band data. At the subnational level, we had 5-year age sex data. And that was it. From that, we were supposed to produce rich, engaging content. But hopefully later on I'll show you that we kind of did manage to do that. The second release was later that year, in December 2012, and that included univariate data for a range of different topics. So that includes things like religion, tenure, country of birth, qualification data, travel to work methods, health, economic activity, ethnicity, and a whole load of other topics. And that was initially released at local authority level, but then that was due to be extended to a lower level geography later along the line. So what do we do with that data? So going to slide 5 and 6 show you the products that we released for the first release of data. So slide 5, I don't know, it's not very good on the screen here, but you can click on that URL at the bottom there and you can actually play with the product. But this was our explanatory analysis type tool. We've got a population pyramid here, which runs from 1911 on up to 2011 in 10-yearly intervals to match the census. And if you go back to 1911, you get a very rectangular structure of the population, and you can see that shift through time up to 2011. We could have just provided the pyramid, but we've provided a narrative alongside that to kind of, again, to engage people and to bring the data to life, to explain patterns that were happening within the data. And that's what we try to do with a lot of our products. We try to add value outside what others might be able to do. So we have, obviously, we have a lot of people in our census department who are very familiar with the data, maybe have worked on many censuses, perhaps not back to 1911, but there's certainly some people that have seen 3 or 4 different censuses go by, and they know the data better than anybody, better than any journalist might know, perhaps better than some academics would know. And this is what we did here. So, if you go to some of the years, you've got some explanations of age heaping in the structure. You see kind of big spikes where people in times past didn't know their age, and so they just kind of roughly put down, oh, I'm about 20, I'm about 30, and you can really see that in the data. So that was our first product. So adding value and kind of context to the data, I think is important for us, and it makes sure, I think we're presenting this in an easy, friendly, engaging way, but importantly, we're not kind of dumbing down the data in any way. Moving on to slide 6, that was presenting the subnational data. Again, click on the link at the bottom if you want to play about with it. But here, this is much more of a data exploratory tool where people could choose the area that they're interested in and make comparisons with another area. You could compare the size of the area, so there are options there to look at the size, but you can also compare the structure, and you can overlay them on top of each other to kind of have a very close comparison of the structures for 2 different areas. And I think probably importantly is probably the quickest way to the data itself as well. If you can imagine in times gone by where this data probably would have been presented in an Excel spreadsheet or maybe a PDF, and people were kind of left to left to do their own data analysis on that. But this is it's presenting it all to the user in one place, and it's quite easy and fun to use. So slide 7 shows you an example of one of the Google Maps we did for the second release. So this is the univariate data release. We produced a whole range of these chloropleth maps looking at very small area level, and where possible we provided a kind of a side-by-side map interface where on the left-hand side you have the 2001 data, and if the variable was comparable in 2011 you'd have the data on the right-hand side as well. That allows users to make a very kind of quick comparison, a visual comparison of how things had changed in their area. I think the real strengths of this were that this is kind of personalised content, and people can put their postcode in, it takes them immediately to their area, they can see the surrounding areas, see how they compare, and they can see how they can compare through time. And importantly, we kind of built in dynamic URLs here where people could share the stories that they were finding in their data with their friends, with their colleagues, with their family. They could just literally list the URL, which is in the internet browser, and then copy and paste that and share that on Twitter, Facebook, email, or wherever really. Move on to slide 8, which shows you some of the media syndication that we had for these releases. We were really, really pleased to see such a big uptake of these products and used in the reporting of these census releases. So it was used on the BBC website, Telegraph website, Guardian website, and each of the newspapers put their own slant around this data, but at the heart of it were our products, and they were really telling an important story. And it was really interesting to talk to the different media outlets. Actually, they were really impressed with our products. They were kind of saying we would have never have been able to have kind of written these stories. We don't have that knowledge. We're glad you've done this. We're glad you've done this job. We're glad that we're free to use this in our reporting. So slide 9 shows you again some of the ways that the maps were embedded in people's, again, in the media reporting. There's some kind of a little bit dodgy reporting as well. There's a screenshot there from the Mail Online with some ladies in burqas above the ethnic map there, which yeah, I think you just have to thick skin that. But so it was great that the media outlets picked up on this, because it meant that the messages that we had within the data were getting out there to people that wouldn't necessarily have seen that data if it was just contained on the ONS website. So if we jump to slide 10, I've got a little chart here of syndication metrics from the first release. The first bars there in a kind of tealy colour are the figures that we had for visits direct to the ONS website. So this was in the first week that the first release products were released. So we had about 10,000 people visit for the data comparator tool. Probably about 5,000 people look at the 100 Years Animation Storytelling tool. If we look at when the Telegraph syndicated that, we kind of see a huge jump in the number of people that were looking at these products. And then the scale might give it away, but if you look at the BBC, just in the first week, the page views in the first week, kind of it reached up to 110,000, and these products, obviously there was a big release there, and it did really attract a kind of a peak audience, but they still continue to kind of get really good traffic through our website. So that was the first release. for the second release, I haven't got a graph here, but just to list some of the figures, this is even more impressive for us. We had 500,000 unique hits across a wide range of different media, and around 3 million page views. This was again in the first week. And when we see figures like that in our team, we kind of begin to wonder how important the ONS website was in meeting the kind of UKSA objectives and ONS objectives to really reach out to our users. If with the best will in the world, I don't think the ONS website is ever going to get the traffic that the BBC website is going to get. So if we can produce kind of content that can get syndicated, that can get closer to the kind of the public and used, then I think that's a good thing. Slide 11 just shows you a summary of whenever we put out our releases, we try to follow what people are saying about them on Twitter. It's a really good form of feedback for us. And we're getting some kind of quite good comments really for statistical releases. Not many people complain about ONS releases, but we're getting comments like, "This is fun to use. This is I'm a data geek and I'm loving this." And I do love a good population pyramid. Was a good one. Although a bit worryingly, I think there were some like that thought that it was the BBC's product. So when it was posted on the site, we didn't get much recognition for that. But hey ho. And actually, on slide 12, this is really interesting with Twitter. I think when we have objectives kind of need to reach out to citizen users, I don't think really. I think lots of people have tried to kind of understand what a citizen user is, but certainly on Twitter, it's clear that looking at people's bios, it's policymakers, it's decision makers, it's academics, it's teachers who have been who've been made aware of the data through these visualizations. And they may not have otherwise seen it if it wasn't kind of syndicated through these different media outlets. And some people might find our tools enough for their purposes. They might just be a kind of a fleeting glance, and that's an interesting tool kind of comment. Others might be encouraged to look into our data in more detail. So that's a really cool thing. The slide 12 here is an example of we track these people. We were just following this conversation that people were having around the travel to work map, and it was clear that they were kind of looking at all these different cities across the UK, and they were looking at the cycle to work initiative, which I think had been launched in places like Bristol and York, and they were evaluating these policies using the map. So looking at the left-hand side of the map for 2001 and seeing what difference that has made to people travelling to work in 2011. So we can see that these maps, at least people are trying to use them to hold kind of government to account and to look at the policies that government are making and using these data to evaluate whether they're working or not. So data visualization in ONS, slide 13. So I said at the start that we've been kind of going around for around 5 or 6 years now. And I think in that time we're kind of beginning to learn, well, not beginning to learn, we think we have learned what works well in terms of engagement with our audience. I think there's definitely a strong push within the organisation to combine data visualization with storytelling to really bring out the insight that our statisticians have in using data visualization techniques. Personalization always works if you can get people, if you can get people relating the data to themselves, that's a really powerful tool, which the census tools did that. And if you can get people to talk about the data, to make it a social experience, so talking on Twitter, talking to their friends, talking to their families about revolving around these visualizations, then that again is a good way to get people using our data. And we're just starting to explore the idea of gamification in our team as well. We're working on this is actually using census data, and we really wish that we had this at launch of the census data, but we're kind of designing a little quiz where instead of most people, you put a postcode in and you find some information about their area, but we're asking people to put their postcode in. It's drawing on an API. We're asking them a set of questions about their area, and we're judging them on how well that they know their area through this set of questions. And we think that's quite a fun way of getting people to, they get a score at the end about how well they know their area. We're thinking of kind of sending this to Nigel Farage and lots of other MPs to test them how well they actually do know their areas. And I haven't got this on this list here, but the other thing that is a kind of a growing challenge for us is that we need to look at how we produce mobile content. That's going to be really hard with data visualization. People like the BBC now are getting over 50% of their traffic through iPads and mobiles, and obviously that's very different on the ONS website, but if we kind of want to continue engaging with the wider public, the wider citizens out there, then we're going to have to tackle this challenge of mobile content, producing content that still works on small screens. So hopefully, kind of just going through this presentation, we've got some kind of real key lessons that we can take away. It's kind of a really overused phrase, but in meeting these objectives that Andrew Dilnott and UKSA are setting, I think content is key. And if we can produce as government organisations good quality content that others can easily interpret, write their own stories around, or gain real insight from the stories that we write, then we go a long way to meeting these challenges laid down by UKSA. Yeah, that's really where I wanted to stop.
Okay. Right, thank you very much to all our speakers, to Richard Batterham, to Andy Milne and Bill Oates, and to Rob Fry. There is, as I say, the opportunity to ask questions. We've got one question in writing at the moment, which I'll read out in a minute. And one of our speakers has a question as well. I mean, the points that I think I've pulled out from the talks are really the focus on users and feedback, and getting, sort of engaging with users, finding out what they want, and the focus on sort of getting a handle on lots of data, really, and then presenting it in an engaging and informing way. I think Bill, you mentioned it anyway, but I'm interested to know to what extent there is interest, or you've stimulated interest in your department in widening what you're doing into other areas. So people have seen what's going on here and now saying, well, perhaps we would like to do this as well. I don't know if, Richard, did you want to say something about that, and then maybe the others as well?
Yeah, I certainly think within HMRC it's the challenge is there, but there are some difficulties with it. Not least, we are fortunate that we have a dedicated trade statistics website, because of the size of the database, etc. But the challenge across the GSS really is that if we're looking to present statistics via gov.uk, at the moment has its limitations. Whereas the aspiration is to do sort of more of what the other guys here have been talking about, which is sort of perhaps personalise or up the ante in terms of visualisation, and actually grab the users and appeal to a different customer base. And I think trying to do that within the gov.uk arena as it stands at the moment is quite difficult for us. So I think that we've still got to work out what that looks like for the future, certainly for HMRC.
I think, sorry, it's Bill Oates here. I think this is where perhaps what we're seeing is, I think it's quite interesting. Three presentations have actually been quite interesting because we've got different aspects of what it means to present statistics. So we've got statistics that are being presented and the trade statistics to a professional audience. You know them very well. You know who they are. It's really important that they are able to get hold of that detailed data to conduct their own analysis. With the school's parents, with the school portal, what we've got is an audience that they don't think of it as statistics. I mean, they are statistics. It's compiled. They are all drawn from statistical releases. But it's about sort of the performance of the public services. And then I think with the ONS work, that is very much about that sort of storytelling. So I think it's what we're seeing is the recognition that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution here. And I think that I would totally agree that the .gov.uk platform is not the platform for the wholesale dissemination of statistics. But I think it could be the platform on which we do storytelling. It could be the platform on which we embed visualizations and graphics. I think much of the architecture that we do on the schools portal is the architectural style and approach is very similar to that used on .gov.uk. So I think there's hope for it. Yes, I think it's if we move as the statistical community wants to engage more in this in reaching out to these audiences, I think the tooling and tool set of the .gov.uk platform is going to be more suitable to that than it was to our traditional dissemination mechanism.
I think driving behaviour is an interesting thing. Sometimes it's quite difficult to see the effect that this can have. You suspect it, and because we're pulling into data, we want to present that. But I wanted a specific reason to really almost let schools face the audience of parents in a fair way, and because certain things schools were in denial about things were hidden. I didn't want to do the crude league table, but I wanted to see if parents could get behind that schools, if things could be challenged. And we noticed in the performance improvement figures that compared to England since devolution, because we haven't had this element of challenge, every single year we have thought we've been improving, but at lesser rate. And I think the key thing was because schools weren't being challenged to the same extent. Since the launch of the portal, for the first time since devolution, we've closed that gap. And I am seeing, you could argue it's a number of policies, there could be a number of policy changes, but I can't see anything that has been more effective than doing this. And so I've seen a really positive effect of what we've done. And that's interesting because Bill and I have just been to a meeting at DFE, and they are looking at copying the My Local School portal for that reason, which is quite interesting, using the same thing. And also, colleagues, when they want something to be displayed, have asked us, look, can you put this on My Local Schools? We know it's going to get a big audience, and that's why we're going to focus on sports, because that's one of the areas of schools that have suffered over the last maybe 20 years.
I think there's a common theme sort of coming out here, which is very much around, and Rob, your presentation, particularly with syndication, identify that, is about exactly what you just said, is about how you can promote in using the right platform or platforms to actually grab that attention. And that's something, I mean, that itself is a challenge that we face in relation to trade data, because it doesn't tend to be something that can be sort of spun in a sexy way that will grab attention. But that's what we're all trying to do. Well, we're trying.
We're working on that. but I think it's like from our perspective, I think I'm in a relatively unique position as well, and the ONS has its own website. It has its own dedicated small team that just does this. It's our day job to produce these graphics. But I think, like, in terms of the outreach side of things, I think we have to. That's kind of what I was saying with looking at some of the Twitter messages there. That people can move from one user group to the other. People can initially be hooked in. I think anyone in this room would find the census interactive maps interesting to them in a kind of a in a public sense, nothing to do with your professional job, but then you can move from that kind of that type of user, from a casual user just kind of playing around, but you've been made aware of that data. You then might think, oh, I could use this in my business. I could use this to decide where I'm going to relocate my next store. It's making people aware, I think, that you can start with this hook, and you can bring people to be made aware of your data and need to use it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's been a helpful discussion on the sort of broadening of it and hooking people in. We've got a question on the screen. We've got a couple of questions on the screen. I'll deal with there's a detailed one for Richard, which we can take later. But I've got one from Julia Bowman. Julia, I don't know whether you can press *6 and say your question, or if you don't in a couple of seconds, I'll read it out and the team can answer it. So, Julia Bowman has asked, we've seen the interest the public have in interactivity and dynamics of data from the examples presented, and is particularly interested in Andy and Bill's. Do you still intend to stick to your what she's characterised as a sort of no moving parts presentation in the future?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, because I need to perhaps clarify what we mean by no moving parts. What we mean by there are lots of moving parts on the screen. When you go to My Local School, you'll see it's very interactive. You can turn on and off. You can customise the visualisation of the data to suit what you're looking at. But where there are no moving parts is actually on the back end. It's actually on the server on which the system is sitting. And that's critical, because when websites suddenly become very popular and see a spike in traffic, it's the server that falls over. So if we've got a way of getting the information out to people without it without there being a bottleneck on the server side of things, we think that's a very good architectural pattern. And as I said, it shares a lot in common with the pattern that's being adopted within .gov.uk.
Just acting as a file server, everything's being run in the browser.
Everything's being run in the browser.
No reliance on any computational power elsewhere.
No querying and things like that. So I think this is a good design pattern to adopt, and it's something which is, I think it's only possible when you've got able to have a sort of a specific focus and design for that eventuality. I think if you're delivering a kind of generic wholesale type strategy, then you will be dependent on server-side components and statistics. But in terms of this storytelling, in terms of this interactive visualization, we've all got the computers we carry around in our pockets these days are far more powerful than the ones that we had on our desks even 3 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. Some of us maybe more powerful than the computers we still have on our desks. If anyone else works in government. So actually, why don't we give some of that, utilise the power of those devices to deliver that interactivity and not put the load and the strain on the server. So it's a bit of a technical point, but it's quite a key breakthrough for us.
Certainly the approach that we've taken with our products as well. Everything just runs in the browser if we can get it to do that, because I think it depends on scales of data sometimes. If you have so much data that you couldn't break up or serve up to the end user in a nice way, then it's kind of a barrier to taking that approach.
You couldn't get the browser to download a whole map of England and Wales in one go, sort of thing. But there's still but it's an approach to, and it fits in with that storytelling and that aspect of things. I mean, one question I have for Rob is the extent. Obviously, there's a risk the more releasing the data in an unvarnished way is, you can tell the story very straight. But the moment you start to apply interpretation, visualization implies interpretation. You're doing a degree of interpretation. You're being selective in what you're saying. As soon as you start to say something about the data, that means there's lots you haven't said about the data. So I'm just wondering about how you're applying sort of rigor to ensure that you're not editorializing and you're maintaining good statistical rigor in that approach.
Sure. So, and with any release, whether it's kind of visualization or in paper format, any report that the ONS produces has to go through an editorial process of being reviewed and making sure, we're not saying anything that could be misinterpreted, that could lead to the wrong conclusion to be taken. So it's something that the government's actually, you have to be careful about what we say. But on the other hand, I think sometimes by saying nothing, we're not using our statistical knowledge to the best.
So you've taken the quality control processes that would have traditionally applied to a bulletin or a statistical release, and you've applied those to your visualizations.
Sure. I mean, we're a small team, but we don't. There's 5-6 of us, but we don't work in isolation. So we work with the different business areas around ONS, and they provide a kind of a. If we're going too far, then they'll say no. You can't say it like that, or you can't present your data like that. So they know the data better than us. We are in our team. We are statisticians. We are researchers, but we've also learnt to code. So we are kind of data literate, but we don't know the data as well as the individual business areas do. So it's a tension there sometimes, because I think we're more closely aligned to wanting to get our data out there, wanting to get it talked about, wanting to get people using it, and sometimes when the business areas only have a release, say annually, they just kind of want to do maybe the same thing that they've always done, and they're kind of quite hesitant in being more adventurous with the way that the data is presented.
When we produce data on a monthly basis,
sure.
It's just not having the time to do it.
Yeah.
So you've got the similar tensions on the other way.
It's a particular issue for education because there are millions of characteristics, and so if I was Ofsted or Estyn in Wales inspector going through, I'd look at a number of things, but you have to make judgment calls that for 1,600 schools in Wales, the presentation, maybe if you've got a high level of English as additional language speakers, that's quite an unusual situation in Wales. But we get the occasional call, well, why aren't you presenting this on your summary page? Because we include 3 levels of free school meal, which is a very significant indicator. But it's all that knowledge, the policy knowledge, and recognising we're not hiding it. It will be contained within the site, but we are promoting what we think is almost not a vanilla product, because that sounds dull, but that is the picture. I imagine a bit like a BBC journalist is trying to do a balanced picture that would cover most things. And the difficulty sometimes, the more information we've got there, it won't apply. So we'll get 10 letters to the minister from a teacher saying, it's really unfair, you're not recognising this particular aspect of my school. But then that's it, and I have to say, sorry, I understand what you're saying, but we have to give what we think is a fair representation of the picture. And that it happens with all statistics, perhaps.
We do that a lot. Today you've seen exploratory type interfaces as well, and sometimes if we don't feel that we're best able to tell the story that we would maybe like to say, you can just throw it out there, and different media outlets will put their own slant on the Daily Mail will be very different to perhaps the Guardian, and
So where do you sit? Because it's something that we wrestle with in terms of our dissemination of statistics, is the extent to which we should concentrate on getting the data out, and then allow those different media to apply the interpretation. And we sort of go back to and say, yes, actually, no, we'd much rather. We're quite proud of these statistics. We want to be the people that have done the fancy math and fancy charts.
Yeah.
But then we think, well, actually, is it government's job to try and be, all things to all people sort of thing, or should we just say, no, we're going to just put the data out there, and other people can do the fancy stuff? I mean,
I think it's a good point. I think it's where we feel as an organisation we can add value, or where if we think that we put the data out that nobody will actually look at it, maybe we should be doing something with that data to bring it to people's attention. So the 2 reasons there. I think one, if we've got a story to tell, and one, if we think other people won't actually take that data and do something with it.
I wanted to come back to that point in a minute, but actually there's a detailed question here which Alan Rees has put on the website. I don't know if Alan wants to unmute himself by pressing *6 and ask his question, or if he doesn't in the next couple of seconds, I'll read it out for him. So Alan is asking, it's a specific question for Richard actually, it's about the trade statistics, and it's really around it might be a general point about updating, but when you save a table and keep it, and then does the table update when you reopen it, or does it stay as it always was?
Yes, it does. It does update. Yeah. The default for the tables is that they're always presented with the latest 3 months of data. But the question that's being asked is about if you build your own table, constructing it however you wish, and you save that and return to it subsequently the next month, will it have that next month's data included within it? And it will, as long as you're including current year, I should say. It will keep on adding to it. So yeah, it will.
Yeah. And I don't know if the other speakers want to say anything about how you constantly update your website.
For credibility of the data was the single most important thing, because there have been examples of health data that has come out that has been really criticised in the past, and I was very wary when we're uploading such bits of information that it was actually I do a delay, and so schools and local authorities will have a lot of time to look, a couple of weeks to look at their data to spot screaming errors. And maybe that's not consistent with official statistics code of practice, because when it should be out, it should be out. But that has prevented any information being, because there's been 500,000 page views of the site, and I didn't want 500,000 people to be disappointed. So I would rather my key stakeholders, which are schools and local authorities, find any errors that we may have missed in our checking procedure. So we do a delay, and we tend to update around 5 times a year. Different information comes out as you imagine exam time, so we'll be getting teacher assessment data around September time, which is what you do. And exam data goes through the system in England. It will come out about the final figures in January. We put ours together finally in about November. Attendance data comes out different. And when you start to do an analysis of the data, which combining the data sets, sometimes that, of course, takes a long time. So about 5 times a year. And that's proportionate to, if we do find something that's a bit unusual, we will change it up immediately, of course. But the rest of the time we'll withhold back and do it in a controlled way, and we advertise it in advance as well. My own concern isn't national statistics. The minister wanted control over that and didn't want to release it as
a product. It's not a statistic. It is drawn from
national
statistics releases.
Yeah.
So it's a subtle. That's what it should be. It's same with yours, I guess.
But our products tend to accompany a standard release. If we were releasing population estimates and we were doing a population pyramid with them, that they would be released at the same time as that data. I don't think they are designated as national statistics, but I think we follow the same. Well, we follow the pattern that our products tend to be updated at the time of a new release. The working model behind that is that we would try to encourage the individual business areas to do that updating themselves, because we want to kind of free up our time to do new developments and work on new projects. And we kind of try to design our products in such a way that it's not actually that onerous on the business areas to do that. Normally it's just a case of adapting, running a kind of a script that takes an Excel spreadsheet and turns the data into the format that's needed. And the rest of the visualization just works off of that data.
Yeah. Trading goods data is published and updated monthly, about 4 to 6 weeks delay from the period end. So, for example, we've just published the March data, March 2014.
And it's yours viewed as, if you view that as national or official statistics?
National statistics.
Yeah. I think, I'm speaking for my own organisation, the Health and Social Care Information Centre, we tend to view these things as alternative delivery mechanisms for a set of national or official statistics rather than being not don't know, has anybody else got any questions, or is there the non-listed? I don't know if anybody else wish to unmute themselves and ask a question. Otherwise, I've got one, which would probably be the last question, I think. No? Okay. So I was interested because I found this extremely inspiring and interesting, actually, in terms of the focus on the users and the ways of getting a handle on all this data. I mean, I think Bill touched on this earlier about the sort of tension between getting the data out and presenting interpretative or material which can be used to for the non-expert user perhaps to get a handle on it. And I was interested to know what you would see as, or whether you'd had experience of delivering killer arguments to people in power or holding money to convince them that this was a valuable thing to do, you know, rather than perhaps the pressure is to just shove the data out and let the users analyse it themselves.
I mean, so Bill Oates here, there's a couple of killer lines that work with ministers in Wales. One usually goes along the line of, well, if we don't do it, the Western Mail will. So that often works. I think where it's particularly contentious is when the statistics reflect the statistics about public services. Because they are, which an awful lot of statistics are, because those are, those are not neutral. Those are will be interpreted by different people in different ways. Statistics about a demographic situation, they're pretty objective, but performance statistics, as we're all working in this space and very familiar with, are not uncontentious. So it is not something for which I think there is a single killer answer to, because different ministers, we start to get into that political space. Different ministers obviously have a right to want to reflect upon their policies in different ways. So there will be differential appetites for the degree to which you go down the visualization route in these different circumstances.
I think that Andy Milne here, the ministers in Wales have found it particularly useful to have a website, which I think in the past we used to get called, oh, you're hiding something, Minister. For instance, we used to compare our spend per head, which is one of the things I put on budget per pupil, and because it was less than in England. That's largely because running schools in London and the South East tends to be more expensive due to cost. And because of free schools and academies, it was not possible to, from the England point of view at the moment, to present that information. And there were accusations that we weren't spending as much per head in Wales. And so my local school has been, on many occasions, a vehicle to say, well, we've put it out there. It's there. What is this conspiracy? What are we doing? It's been, the ministers have liked that because on many occasions the speakers said, well, or if they're in a debate, they said, well, we've put it out there. We've got a website. We've got hundreds of thousands of people looking on that. We're not hiding anything. And they've really liked it. It's a vehicle for transparency, which is interesting because normally ministers try to hide things.
We won't get onto that. Just a couple of quick words from Rob and Richard, and then I think we'll have to wind this up.
Sure. I think I'll just build on what Andy has just said. I think there are two kind of initiatives that are going out on in the wider world. One is the open data movement, and I think that's just what you've been speaking about. People aren't encouraged to hide their data anymore, and putting spreadsheets on the web is one way of producing open data, but that's not really then being, I don't think, fully open and kind of shoving it in the user's face and saying, here it is, in a visualization type format. And I think the UKSA actually are doing a lot of good work. I think pretty much a lot of the people that come to us and work with us within ONS and outside of ONS come come from a viewpoint that the UKSA have been sort of hammering on their door, saying kind of, who are your users? Are you sure it's just these people that are in government using your data? Are you sure you're not neglecting businesses and academics and the general public that might want to use your data? So I think, the UKSA are doing a very good job in kind of making sure that government data is out there.
I'd agree with that, but also, I mean, coming from a revenue department, very often in the past the questions have been more about, why are you doing this? Why are you offering this data in such a variety of different ways to different customer groups? Why don't you just dump the data out there? And there's nothing as powerful as having the volume of unique users that we do have at the site, and there's nothing as powerful as an award. Because, to be honest, senior stakeholders like to hear and crow about that. So, thank you very much.
Okay, so on that note, I think we ought to draw this session to a close. Can I remind people who are visiting the site that there's a poll item on the top of your screen, which we would like you to complete to give us some brief feedback on the meeting. So I found that myself very, very interesting, and part of the answer to the question I was asking at the end about convincing people of the value is actually these sort of examples which are presented in these meetings, where it's obvious there's been a lot of interest and engagement and value to the users of the statistics, and I think that's hugely inspiring and very good. I'm very grateful to the speakers, to Richard Batterham, to Andy Milne and Bill Oates, and to Rob Fry for their contribution to this afternoon's meeting, to the RSS team for making it happen. I draw your attention to the other parts of the Professional Statisticians Forum programme. There's a meeting on consultancy on the 2nd of June, and there are other meetings which are listed on the RSS website which will be of interest to people. I encourage you to look at that. I'm Andy Sutherland. I'm both a member of the RSS Professional Affairs Committee, and I'm also the Head of Profession at the Health and Social Care Information Centre in Leeds. So it's been my pleasure to chair this meeting, and thank you all for attending. I think at this point we'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.